There are moments in life when people make a terrible mistake. They judge your strength by what they can see. They saw your silence and thought you were weak. They saw your patience and assumed you were afraid. They saw you walking away from unnecessary battles and convinced themselves that you had nothing left to fight with. But they never understood what was happening behind the scenes. They never knew how many nights you had to rebuild yourself, how many disappointments taught you discernment, how many betrayals strengthened your faith, or how many times you had to stand back up when nobody was watching. They didn't realize how powerful you were when they came against you. They thought they were confronting someone easy to break, but they were confronting someone who had already survived storms that should have destroyed them. And now, everything they misunderstood about you is about to become the very thing that shocks them. Your quietness was preparation. Your distance was protection. Your struggles were training. Your tears were not signs of defeat. They were evidence that you kept moving even when your heart was exhausted. You don't have to chase revenge, prove your worth, or explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Let your life answer them. Let your growth answer them. Let your peace answer them. Because when God takes someone through the fire, He doesn't always remove the fire. Sometimes He changes the person walking through it. And when you emerge stronger, wiser, calmer, and more focused than before, the same people who underestimated you may suddenly realize they were never dealing with the person they thought they knew. They came against your old chapter, but they are about to witness what was being built in the next one. So listen carefully, because this message is for the person who has been underestimated, dismissed, betrayed, challenged, or counted out. What looked like your weakness may have been your greatest preparation. What looked like your delay may have been divine positioning. And what they believed was the end of your story may actually be the beginning of the chapter that proves just how powerful you truly are. They mistook your silence for weakness. There is a kind of strength that does not announce itself. It does not shout, threaten, argue, or demand attention. It simply stands there, quietly becoming stronger, while everyone else assumes nothing is happening. That was your strength. They looked at your silence and completely misunderstood it. They thought because you did not respond to every accusation, you had no answer. They thought because you walked away from certain arguments, you were afraid to confront them. They thought because you stopped explaining yourself, you had been defeated. But they never understood that silence can be the language of someone who has finally learned the difference between a battle worth fighting and a battle designed to steal their peace. You were not silent because you were powerless. You were silent because you were becoming powerful enough to stop wasting your energy on people who had already decided to misunderstand you. They expected an emotional reaction. They expected you to become angry, defensive, desperate, or broken. They wanted evidence that their words had reached the deepest part of you. But instead, you became quiet. You started observing instead of reacting. You started listening instead of defending. You began noticing patterns that you had previously ignored. Every conversation revealed something. Every betrayal taught you something. Every disappointment opened your eyes to something you had refused to see. While they were celebrating what they believed was your weakness, you were gaining something far more valuable: discernment. You were learning who deserved access to your heart, who deserved your trust, and who only wanted access to your energy. There comes a point when you realize that explaining yourself to everyone is exhausting. You can tell the truth 100 times, and someone committed to believing a lie will still reject it. You can show someone your heart, and if they have already chosen to judge you, they may still call your sincerity manipulation. You can prove your intentions, and they may still question them. So eventually, you stop trying to convince people who benefit from misunderstanding you. You let them believe whatever they want, not because you agree with their judgment, but because you finally understand that their opinion does not have the authority to define your identity. That is when your silence becomes powerful. Your silence became a boundary. It said, "I will not allow your chaos to become my identity." It said, "I will not destroy my peace just to win an argument." It said, "I know who I am, and I no longer need everyone else to understand me." That kind of confidence terrifies people who are accustomed to controlling you through emotional reactions. When they can no longer provoke you, they lose one of their greatest sources of influence. They can speak louder, but you become calmer. They can spread rumors, but you become more focused. They can attempt to pull you backward, but you keep moving forward. Suddenly, the person they thought they could manipulate becomes the person they can no longer control. And perhaps the most beautiful part, is that your silence gave you room to heal. You were carrying wounds that nobody could see. There were moments when you questioned yourself, moments when you wondered whether you had been too kind, too trusting, too patient. But instead of allowing those wounds to turn you bitter, you allowed them to make you wiser. You stopped seeing every closed door as rejection. You stopped chasing people who repeatedly showed you they did not value you. You stopped begging for explanations from people who were comfortable hurting you. Slowly, you discovered something extraordinary. You could survive without their approval. That realization changed everything. You began carrying yourself differently. You stopped entering every conflict. You stopped responding to every provocation. You stopped trying to prove that you were good to people determined to see you as bad. Your energy became precious. Your time became valuable. Your peace became non-negotiable. And the people who once thought they knew exactly how to trigger you suddenly discovered that the old version of you was disappearing. They were still speaking to the person you used to be, while you were becoming someone entirely different. Never apologize for the strength you developed in silence. Never feel ashamed of the seasons when you had to retreat, rebuild, and protect your peace. There was a reason you became quieter. There was a reason you stopped explaining. There was a reason you began moving differently. Sometimes God separates you from noise so you can finally hear direction. Sometimes He removes certain voices so you can hear your own purpose again. And sometimes the greatest transformation happens when nobody is applauding you. So let them keep wondering why you did not fight back. Let them wonder why you did not respond. Let them wonder why their attempts to provoke you stopped working. They may never understand what happened inside you, and they do not have to. Your transformation does not require their permission. Your healing does not require their approval. Your future does not require their agreement. The same silence they interpreted as weakness may eventually become the loudest testimony of your strength, because you were never powerless. You were preparing, you were learning, you were healing, you were becoming. And when your life begins reflecting the strength you built in those quiet seasons, they will finally understand the mistake they made. They confused your silence with surrender, when it was actually preparation for your greatest rise. They attacked what they could not understand. There are people who become uncomfortable when they encounter a strength they cannot explain. They do not know what to do with someone who remains peaceful under pressure, someone who can walk through disappointment without losing their purpose, someone who can be hurt without becoming hateful, and someone who can be rejected without abandoning themselves. That was the part of you they never understood. They looked at your life through the surface. They saw your struggles, your quiet seasons, your setbacks, and the moments when you seemed uncertain, and they thought they had figured you out. They assumed they knew your limits. They assumed they knew what would break you. They assumed that if they applied enough pressure, you would eventually surrender. But they were looking at circumstances while God was working on character. They were studying your current chapter while heaven was preparing your next one. They attacked you because they could not understand the source of your resilience. They wondered how you could keep moving after being disappointed so many times. They wondered why betrayal did not permanently destroy your ability to trust yourself. They wondered why rejection did not make you desperate for approval. They wondered why you could lose people and still keep your heart open to your future. What they failed to understand was that your strength was not created by an easy life. It was forged through difficult seasons. Every obstacle had developed something inside you. Every disappointment had taught you patience. Every betrayal had sharpened your discernment. Every closed door had taught you that not every opportunity deserves pursuit. Every lonely season had taught you that being alone is sometimes better than being surrounded by people who secretly want to see you fail. They thought your kindness meant weakness, but kindness and weakness are not the same thing. A strong person can choose gentleness because they do not need to prove how powerful they are. A secure person does not need to dominate every room. A wise person does not respond to every insult. You learn that strength is not always found in confrontation. Sometimes strength is walking away when you could retaliate. Sometimes strength is remaining silent when you have enough information to expose someone. Sometimes strength is forgiving without reopening the door. Sometimes strength is choosing peace even when chaos would make you feel justified. They saw your restraint and assumed you lacked power, but restraint requires power. Anyone can react. It takes maturity to decide when not to, and that is why their attacks eventually revealed more about them than they ever revealed about you. They thought they were exposing your weaknesses, but they were exposing their own intentions. They showed you who they were when they believed there would be no consequences. They revealed how quickly they could turn against you when you stopped serving their expectations. They revealed that some people only support you while your growth does not threaten their comfort. They revealed that some relationships were built on convenience rather than genuine loyalty. Painful as those discoveries were, they became valuable lessons. You stopped asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and began asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift changed everything, because once you stop seeing every attack as a curse and start seeing certain experiences as instruction, your entire perspective changes. You become more careful with access. You stop giving everyone the same level of trust. You stop confusing familiarity with loyalty. You stop assuming that history automatically means someone deserves a place in your future. You begin watching actions instead of promises. You begin listening to patterns instead of excuses. And suddenly, the very people who thought they were making you weaker have actually helped you become wiser. They never realized that their opposition could become your training ground. Every time they tried to discourage you, you learned perseverance. Every time they underestimated you, you learned to stop seeking validation. Every time they tried to make you feel insignificant, you learned to measure yourself by something deeper than public opinion. Their rejection pushed you towards self-respect. Their betrayal pushed you toward discernment. Their criticism pushed you toward purpose. Their pressure forced you to discover strength you might never have recognized in comfortable circumstances. And now you are beginning to understand something profound. You do not have to make everyone understand you. You do not have to convince your critics that you are worthy. You do not have to force your enemies to respect you. You do not need to chase recognition from people who only noticed you when they thought they could control you. Your responsibility is to keep becoming, keep growing, keep learning, keep walking forward. Let your character become stronger than their opinions. Let your consistency become louder than their accusations. Let your future become the answer to every assumption they made about you. One day, they may look back and realize that they completely misunderstood the person they challenged. They thought they were confronting someone fragile, but they were confronting someone who had already survived storms they knew nothing about. They thought pressure would crush you, but pressure revealed you. They thought opposition would end your journey, but opposition sharpened your direction. They thought their attack would define your story, but God can take even painful chapters and use them to prepare something greater. So do not waste your energy trying to make people understand the strength they refuse to recognize. Keep walking, keep building, keep becoming. The people who could not understand your resilience do not need a detailed explanation. Eventually, your life will speak in a language they cannot ignore. They attacked what they could not understand, but they may eventually discover that the very pressure they used against you helped reveal the power they never knew you possessed. The battle revealed you really were. There are battles that arrive disguised as disasters, but later you realize they were revelations. They did not come into your life simply to hurt you. They exposed what was hidden, tested what was genuine, and introduced you to a strength you did not know you carried. When they came against you, they thought the pressure would reveal your weakness. They expected you to panic, crumble, beg, react, or retreat. They believed the difficult circumstances surrounding you would become proof that you were not strong enough to survive. But something unexpected happened. The battle did not destroy you. It revealed you. It revealed your endurance when you thought you had none left. It revealed your courage when fear was surrounding you. It revealed your faith when circumstances gave you every reason to doubt. And most importantly, it revealed that you were far more prepared for adversity than the people watching your struggle ever imagined. Sometimes you do not discover your strength while everything is comfortable. You discover it when comfort disappears. You discover it when the people you trusted suddenly change. You discover it when doors close without explanation. You discover it when your plans collapse and you have to rebuild from the ground up. You discover it when you wake up carrying questions that have no immediate answers, yet somehow you still get up and keep moving. That is where your character was being developed. While other people were watching the outside of your life and thinking you were losing, something powerful was happening internally. You were becoming more disciplined. You were becoming more discerning. You were becoming less dependent on approval. You were learning to stand without applause. They may have mistaken your difficult season for your final destination. That was their mistake. A storm is not proof that your journey is over. Sometimes a storm simply reveals how deeply rooted you have become. A tree with shallow roots falls when the wind arrives, but a tree with deep roots may bend without breaking. Your battles forced your roots deeper. You learned how to pray when you did not have answers. You learned how to continue when motivation disappeared. You learned how to trust the process when nobody could guarantee the outcome. You learned that progress does not always look like celebration. Sometimes progress looks like getting through another difficult day without giving up. And then something changed inside you. You stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started asking, "What is this preparing me for?" That question transformed your perspective. Instead of seeing every obstacle as evidence that God had forgotten you, you began seeing certain obstacles as opportunities to develop qualities you would need later. Patience could not be developed without waiting. Discernment could not be developed without encountering deception. Courage could not be developed without facing fear. Resilience could not be developed without adversity. The very things you wished would disappear immediately were sometimes teaching you lessons that comfort never could. The people who came against you never knew how much you had already survived. They saw one chapter and assumed they understood the entire book. They saw you crying and thought you were broken. They saw you step back and thought you were defeated. They saw you lose something and assumed you had lost everything. But they could not see the internal rebuilding taking place. They could not see the strength returning. They could not see the wisdom developing. They could not see the vision becoming clearer. They could not see the peace beginning to replace the anxiety. They were watching the construction site and judging the unfinished building, unaware that something magnificent was being built underneath the surface. Perhaps that is why your transformation will surprise them. They expected your pain to make you bitter, but it made you wiser. They expected rejection to make you desperate, but it taught you self-respect. They expected betrayal to make you suspicious of everyone, but it taught you discernment. They expected failure to make you quit, but it taught you persistence. They expected loneliness to destroy you, but it taught you how to become comfortable with your own company and confident in your own identity. Every battle left a scar, but every scar carried a lesson. You are no longer the person who entered that battle. You may still remember what happened, but you do not have to remain trapped in who you were when it happened. That is one of the greatest signs of growth. You can remember without reliving. You can forgive without returning. You can learn without becoming bitter. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to dictate what happens next. The battle may have changed you, but it does not have to define you. And now, when another challenge appears, you are not facing it with the same mindset you had before. You have evidence. You know you can survive hard seasons. You know you can rebuild. You know you can lose something and still have a future. You know that rejection can redirect you. You know that disappointment can deepen you. You know that silence can strengthen you. You know that what looks like an ending can become a doorway. So let the battle remain behind you as evidence, not as a prison. Let every scar remind you that you endured. Let every closed door remind you that your story continued anyway. Let every betrayal remind you that you became wiser. Let every difficult season remind you that you did not disappear when life became difficult. You evolved. They thought the battle would reveal your weakness. Instead, it revealed your character. They thought pressure would make you disappear. Instead, pressure introduced you to your own strength. They thought they were watching you fall, but they were watching you become. The battle did not create your power. It revealed the power that had been inside you all along. They realized too late that you were not alone. They thought they had you surrounded because they only counted what they could see. They looked at the people standing beside them, the opinions supporting their version of the story, the circumstances that seemed to be working against you, and they convinced themselves that you were alone. They saw you walking quietly and assumed nobody was standing with you. They saw you facing pressure without making noise and assumed you had no support. They watched certain doors close and believed every door had been locked. What they never understood was that visible support is not the only kind of support that exists. Sometimes the most important help is happening quietly, behind the scenes, beyond human understanding. Sometimes God is arranging things you cannot yet see, while you are simply being asked to keep walking by faith. They thought they were watching your downfall, but they were unknowingly watching the beginning of a divine repositioning. There is a season when it feels as though everyone has turned against you. People misunderstand your intentions. Someone repeats a distorted version of your story. Others believe it, without asking questions. People you expected to defend you remain silent. Doors you thought would open suddenly close. And for a moment you wonder, who is actually with me? But those seasons can teach you something powerful. Not everyone who is physically present is truly connected to your purpose, and not everyone who is absent has abandoned you. Sometimes God allows certain people to step away because their presence would interfere with where you are going. Sometimes separation is not punishment, it is protection. They believed numbers were power. They thought having more voices meant having more truth. They assumed that if enough people agreed against you, you would eventually doubt yourself. But truth does not become false because a crowd refuses to accept it. Your worth does not decrease because someone misunderstands you. Your future does not disappear because a few people decided they no longer believe in you. And your calling does not require unanimous approval. You do not need everyone to understand where you are going. You need the courage to keep going when understanding is absent. What they did not know was that every difficult season was developing a deeper relationship between you and God. When people became unavailable, you learned how to pray differently. When answers were delayed, you learned patience. When you could not see the next step, you learned trust. When nobody could reassure you, you learned to stand on promises rather than opinions. That kind of spiritual strength cannot be measured by appearances. Someone can look completely alone while carrying an inner confidence that no crowd could manufacture. And that is what they failed to recognize in you. They may have thought your quietness meant you had no strategy. In reality, you were learning to stop announcing every move. You realized that not every blessing needs an audience. Not every plan needs to be explained. Not every transition needs to be documented. There is power in moving quietly when your future is still developing. You do not need to reveal everything to everyone. Sometimes protecting your vision means keeping it away from people who would criticize it before it has a chance to grow. Then slowly, things began changing. Someone unexpected encouraged you. An opportunity appeared from a direction you never considered. A conversation happened at exactly the right moment. A door opened after several others had closed. A person who once doubted you began seeing your value. A situation that looked impossible started shifting. And suddenly you realized that while you were worried about who was against you, God had been arranging what was for you. That is the part they never anticipated. They calculated your future based on your current circumstances. They saw what you had lost and assumed you had nothing left. They saw the people who walked away and assumed your support system had disappeared. They did not realize that sometimes losing the wrong people creates space for the right people. Sometimes rejection redirects you toward an environment where you can actually flourish. Sometimes isolation becomes preparation for elevation. And when your breakthrough begins to appear, do not feel obligated to explain every detail to the people who once doubted you. You do not need to gather everyone together and announce that you were right. Out. Let your life become the evidence. Let your peace become the evidence. Let your consistency become the evidence. Let the doors that open for you speak louder than the doors that close behind you. You do not have to chase vindication when God can reveal the truth through your transformation. Remember this. Being surrounded is not the same as being supported. A crowd can stand around you and still leave you empty. One genuine connection can be more valuable than 100 people who only appear when things are convenient. And sometimes, when everyone seems to disappear, you discover that you were never truly abandoned. They thought you were standing alone because they could not see what was happening beyond the surface. They counted people, but God was counting purpose. They counted opposition, but God was preparing opportunity. They counted closed doors, but God was preparing another entrance. They thought you had no one behind you, yet you were being carried through a season that was preparing you for something greater. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep your heart steady. You may not see everything yet, but you do not need to see the entire staircase to take the next step. They realized too late that you were never as alone as they thought. You were simply being prepared in private for a future they could not see coming. Your victory will be the proof they never expected. There comes a moment when you finally understand that you do not have to fight every person who fought against you. You do not have to chase every accusation, answer every rumor, correct every misunderstanding, or force people to recognize your value. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply to keep becoming the person they said you could never become. They may have expected your pain to define you, your setbacks to embarrass you, and their opposition to become the final chapter of your story. But they underestimated something they could not see. your ability to rise without becoming bitter, to grow without needing revenge, and to keep moving forward even when nobody was applauding. Your victory was never supposed to be about destroying them. Your victory was supposed to be about discovering yourself after everything they thought would break you. Think about how many times people judged your future based on your present circumstances. They saw the season when you were struggling and assumed you would always struggle. They saw you grieving a loss and assumed you would remain broken. They saw you standing alone and assumed you had been forgotten. They saw opportunities disappear and assumed your best days were behind you. But people often make the mistake of judging a seed by its appearance. A seed buried beneath the ground looks like something has been buried and forgotten. Nobody standing above the soil can see the roots developing underneath. Nobody can see the silent transformation happening in darkness. Yet beneath the surface, life is preparing to emerge. That is what happened to you. Your quiet season was not the end. It was preparation. While they were watching your circumstances, you were building character. While they were talking about your failures, you were learning from them. While they were celebrating your setbacks, you were developing resilience. While they were waiting for you to collapse, you were discovering how to stand differently. You learned that your identity could not be built around other people's approval. You learned that losing people does not mean losing yourself. You learned that rejection can redirect you. You learned that disappointment can sharpen your vision. You learned that sometimes the greatest blessings is not getting what you wanted, because what you wanted would have kept you attached to something that was never meant to accompany you into your next chapter. And now your victory is beginning to take a different shape. It may not arrive as a dramatic moment where everyone who doubted you suddenly apologizes. It may be quieter than that. Your victory might look like waking up with peace where anxiety used to live. It might look like finally believing in yourself again. It might look like having boundaries without guilt. It might look like choosing relationships that honor you instead of constantly draining you. It might look like pursuing your purpose without needing everyone to understand it. It might look like becoming so emotionally and spiritually grounded that the same things that once destroyed your peace no longer have the power to control you. That is real victory, not revenge, not humiliation, not proving that someone else was wrong. Transformation. You become so deeply rooted in who you are that their opinions lose their authority over you. You become so focused on where you are going that you stop checking who is watching. You become so committed to your purpose that distractions no longer feel attractive. And eventually, the people who expected you to remain stuck will notice something they cannot explain. You are no longer trying to return to who you were before the battle. You are becoming someone greater. Your journey may also become an answer to someone else's doubt. There are people who may never admit they underestimated you, but they will see the evidence. They will notice your discipline. They will notice your peace. They will notice your confidence. They will notice that you did not allow betrayal to make you cruel or hardship to make you quit. And perhaps that will be more powerful than any confrontation could ever be. You will not have to tell them, "Look what I accomplished." Your life will quietly say it for you. But remember this: do not let the desire to prove people wrong become the foundation of your success. If you build your future around their opinions, they still control you. Build because you were called to grow. Build because you have a purpose. Build because you owe yourself the life you kept postponing while trying to satisfy everyone else. Build because your story deserves another chapter. Build because God did not bring you through everything you survived just so you could spend the rest of your life staring backward. There will be moments when you remember everything they did, and you will realize that it no longer carries the same weight. The memory may remain, but the pain has lost its authority. You can look back without wanting to go back. You can remember the betrayal without wishing revenge. You can acknowledge the injustice without allowing it to poison your future. That is when you know you have truly won. Your victory will not simply be that you survived what they did. Your victory will be that you became someone they could never have imagined. Stronger, wiser, calmer, more discerning, more purposeful, and more dependent on God than on human approval. They thought their actions would reduce you to your worst moment. But God can turn your worst chapter into the foundation of your greatest testimony. So keep going. Do not rush the process. Do not compare your timeline with anyone else's. Do not allow temporary circumstances to convince you that your story is permanent. The people who underestimated you only saw a snapshot. They did not see the whole journey. They did not see the tears, the prayers, The lessons, the rebuilding, the nights you almost gave up but chose to continue. And one day, the evidence will speak without you saying a word. Your peace will speak, your growth will speak, your character will speak, your new life will speak. The same people who thought they had the power to stop you will realize they were never holding your destiny in their hands. They were only witnessing a chapter. And the greatest proof that they were wrong will not be your anger. It will be your elevation. You will not need revenge when your transformation becomes the proof they never expected.